Thinking about buying a house this year but don't know where to start, not sure how much deposit you need? Well, you're absolutely not alone. So I've got all the answers for you coming up. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Welcome also to the new studio, hope you like it. My name is Adam and I am an expert mortgage broker, and today I am talking all about deposits. Now, watch till the end because I've got my top tips for you on how to actually save your deposit in the first place. Now, important message before we start, this video is all about saving for a residential purchase. That is a house for you to live in, and not an investment property. We'll do that another day, but this is all about a house for you to live in. And if you like what you see, then give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. There's a new video for you every week. So it's worth starting with a few of the different schemes that are available when you buy a house. Now we're going to cover three. We're going to cover shared ownerships, we're going to cover normal purchases just from the open market, and we'll also cover the help to buy buying schemes as well. Let's do help to buy and normal purchases first, because actually the deposit can be the same. So with both of these things we need 5%. I've talked about 5% deposit in loads of other videos, so hopefully that's no surprise. But 5% is the key. You can put down more. Interestingly, with help to buy as well, not many people know this, you can put in more than 5%. That's what we did when we bought a house a few years ago on help to buy. We put in more than 5% because we'd sold before. It's a long story you don't need to hear right now, but we'd sold and bought. Nowadays you have to be a first-time buyer, so that's not really relevant, but you can put in more than 5%. Saying that, the more deposit we put in, the better. The bigger our deposit, the lower our rate is going to be, the lower the interest rate is going to be from the lender. There's a good reason for that, which not a lot of people really think about. It's all about risk for the mortgage lender. So if we picture the scene, we put in 5% deposit, the lender gives you 95% of the property's purchase price. Now, let's say 6 months later, a year later, you stop paying the mortgage for whatever reason, something goes wrong in your life and you can't pay the mortgage anymore. Well, eventually that lender is going to repossess your property. They're going to take the property away from you and they're going to want to sell it. Now, if they have secured 95% of that property's purchase price on there, the chance of them being able to sell it and get all their money back and pay all the fees and costs and everything is less, isn't it, really? If you have 15 or 20% deposit, there's a bigger gap there for the lender to make sure that they're going to get their money back. So if they need to take the property away from you and sell it, they want to make sure that they get their money back. And if they can't, that's a bigger risk for them. So they're going to charge you a higher interest rate. So let's look at some examples. Now, if we have a house at, say, £200,000, 5% deposit, we've done this before, but 5% deposit is £10,000. So £10,000 deposit. Now, there's some fees and costs that we need to pay. I'm going to pop a link to the in the description below for another video. I've done all about the fees and the costs that are involved, but £10,000 deposit. If our house is more like £300,000, then that's a £15,000 deposit. If our house is £400,000, then it's £20,000. So you know where this is going, it's 5%. Now, shared ownership is a little bit different. So you might buy a shared ownership property that's worth £300,000, but let's say you're buying 50% of the property, so 50% share. So 50% share is £150,000. So you only need 5% deposit of your share. So 5% deposit of £150,000 is £7,500. So there's quite a low deposit really for a shared ownership. Shared ownership can be really affordable for a lot of people. That's the whole reason. That's why it's there. I always think if you can avoid shared ownership, then you should. But for a lot of people, that is the best choice. There are also some family schemes available from a couple of different lenders. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail because, to be honest, they are few and far between, and it relies on usually parents or grandparents or family members putting in some money, maybe investing it with that bank or building society for a little while until the equity is built up. So There are schemes available where you might not even need any deposit at all. We'll perhaps do another video on that another day. If you want me to do that, then let me know in the comments. But for now, we'll kind of gloss over that a little bit, so that there may be the odd exception to the rule, but in the most part, we're going to need 5% deposit. Now, lenders have different stages at which their rates drop down. So we talk about 5% deposit, we talk about 10%. We can also then go on to 15, 20, some lenders have a stage there. 25% deposit is a big one, and then normally we drop down to 40% deposit or go up to 40% deposit. They're the main stages. Now, you do not have to have exactly 5 or 10 or 15% deposit. You can have whatever deposit you like, it's just you fit into that bracket. So if you've got 8% deposit, for example, you're going to get the same rate as you would do if you'd got 5%. Now, it will cost you a bit less because you're borrowing less, and the less you borrow, the less it will cost, but you can be in that same bracket. If you've got 13.5% deposit, whatever that would work out to, then you're going to be in the same bracket as if you've got 10%. So if you're close to that next level down and you can just push to get there, quite often that can make a decent difference for you, particularly from 5 to 10%. That's quite a drop in the interest rate. Now, there's some pros and cons to consider here with 5% deposit. If we've got 5% deposit, it means we've got a nice low deposit. We can get on the housing market, we can get on the ladder sooner than if we wait and save. But the interest rate is going to be higher. We are going to pay a higher rate, and so our monthly payment is going to be higher. It's also slightly trickier to get the mortgage in the first place. A lot of lenders, their criteria is really stringent. You know, we have to be squeaky clean credit score, income is nice and reliable and everything. There's no quirkiness involved in your case. That's where we need to be to get 5% deposit or 95% mortgage. If we don't quite fit within those, then we may need to put in a slightly higher deposit. So a couple of examples. If you're on a visa, so if you haven't got indefinite leave to remain in the UK or fully settled status, then you may well need to put in a higher deposit. Some lenders even say 25% deposit. A couple of exceptions though, particularly for highly skilled visas, you know, tier 1 highly skilled visas. There's the odd lender that will let you have a smaller deposit if you're on a highly skilled visa. So that's something to bear in mind. I touched on it just then as well. If you've got poor credit history, so if your credit score is not very good, or you've got missed and late payments or defaults and CCJs, again, I've done a video about this, but I'll put a link in the description. So if you've got those things on your credit file, then it's going to be really tricky to have a smaller deposit mortgage. Credit score though, credit file, things only stay on there 6 years, so if it's a long time ago then it's not so much of an issue, but if it's more recent then we're going to struggle to get a 95% mortgage. Also, if your income is a little bit outside of the ordinary, you know, if you've got, you know, if you're self-employed or recently self-employed, or you know, you own a company and your pay comes from all sorts of different places, that may be a little bit complex for some lenders as well, so that may put some lenders off. That really is going to be a bespoke situation, so we need to look at everyone's individual circumstances for those kind of situations to see what's available. It's not really one brush fits all. Now, the other reason why it's good to have as much deposit as possible is some lenders, a fair few lenders actually I would say, will be more generous if you've got more deposit. So the more deposit you put in, the more they will lend. Now, once you've purchased your property and you've been in there for a little while, we don't call it deposit anymore, we call it equity. So this is a bit of a side note really, but your equity is your deposit. It's the same thing. It's just the difference between how much you owe on your mortgage and what your house price is worth. And over time, that should grow. So your equity should grow because you'll repay your mortgage and the value of your house should go up. Not always. Sometimes they go down. House prices fluctuate, but over time, usually they will always go up. And so after a little while, you will start to have more and more equity in your property, and you can use that for moving house. So the next house you want to buy, that will be your deposit deposit for that house, or sometimes we will help people release some equity from their property to do things. Again, I've done a video on this before if you want to watch it. I'll put a link in the description. But we can pay off debts with our equity. We can do some home improvements. That's the big one. So we could do an extension or something like that with it. That's for another day. But once you own your property, we don't call it deposit anymore. We call it equity. So if you hear that term, that's what it means. Now, for those of you that have stayed till the end, I said I would give you some top tips on actually saving for that deposit in the first place. So here we go. A couple of things that we need to think about. The first one is to make sure that you've got separate savings accounts. Now, you might want 2 or 3, but separate savings accounts to your everyday spending and your bills and things. At the start of the month or straight after payday, whenever you get paid, we need to make sure that we've got enough money in your bills account and your spending money to cover all the things that you're going to spend money on. Now, actually, I've got a bills account. Then I've got a spending money account, so I've got all the bills come out of one account, and then I've got an account which I put a little bit in just for spending on bits and bobs, and then we have savings accounts separately. So every payday you need to keep the money that you need for your bills. Allocate yourself a little bit of spending because we don't want to stay at home in our pajamas eating beans on toast forever. We've got to have some sort of life as well, but we just need to be cautious and we need to have the end goal in mind, saving for that deposit. So bills account, spending money account, savings account. We put it in there at the start of the month and then you don't touch it. That's it now, and then we'll just add to it again next month. The next one is keeping your credit commitments to a minimum. Now, I'm talking things like loans and credit cards and things, just your purchases, your spending, spend what you've allocated and try not to spend any more. Loans and credit cards are a big one. Cars, it's really tempting when you're young, isn't it, to go out and buy an amazing car. I'm a sucker for cars. I've had so many cars and wasted so much money on cars in my life, but that's a whole other story. Yeah, it's really easy to go and do that, but again, that end goal in mind. What are we looking for? We're trying to save for that deposit. What's more important, having a flashy car or making sure that we can buy our first house sooner than we thought? So obviously we need a car. Most people will need a car of some sort. Good cars, expensive cars can come later on once you've got your house. But for now, rein it in. Let's make sure that our spending is at a minimum and we're saving as much as possible. So I've talked about cars, but other things, loans, fancy clothes and all that sort of stuff. The less of that we can spend our money on, the more of that we can go without, the more money we've got to save. The next thing for me is possibly controversial, living with parents. Now, not all of us can live with parents, geographical reasons or whatever reasons, personal reasons, but the longer you can bear living with your parents, the longer they can bear living with you as well, the better, because normally in theory you're not going to be spending much money on rent. You might give them a little bit for housekeeping and things, but you're not going to be spending a fortune on rent if you're staying with your parents or family members of any other description. But the longer we can do that, the better. Again, the end goal in mind is saving for that deposit. So the longer we can go without paying rent and things, because you try and pay rent and save, it's so hard. I know it's going to be difficult, but if you can just spend a little bit longer living with family, that's really going to help you save as much as possible. In a year, think about how much you could save in a year if you don't have rent and bills and things going out. Lastly, we're thinking Help to Buy ISA. Depends when you're watching this video, what it's called and what the scheme rules and criteria are. I'm not going to go over that now because they change quite often, but at the moment you can put some money in each month, and then after a certain period of time, the government, when you spend that money on buying a house, the government will give you a bonus, a top-up, so they'll add into your deposit, and most lenders will use that in some way or another. So that's a really good scheme. So whatever scheme's available at the time, if you want to know about that, by the way, you want to know what is available, feel free to get in touch with us, and we'll take through the schemes that are available now. So there's my top tips for saving. That's how much deposit we need. Now, if you'd like to know more about your individual situation, you can drop us a comment. You can visit our website and book a call with us. There's a link to that in the description below. So I hope you found that useful. Give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. I will be back with you next week for another video. Until then, take care.